Good afternoon and welcome to the Living Well radio program. You can find us here every Wednesday at 1 p.m. on KATB 89.3 in Anchorage, KJLP 88.9 in Palmer. You can also catch us online at katb.org. My name is Cammie and I am once again joined by my awesome co-host Betty. Welcome to the studio again, Betty.
Thank you, Cammie. We're figuring this out a little bit at a time, aren't
we? We are. We're getting all the buttons figured out somewhat. And only having to record shows once, which is good. Mm-hmm. So we're learning here. We are so pleased to have another local Alaskan woman joining us today, Tina Johnson-Stair. She is a volunteer with the God Behind Bars ministry. And I'll tell you, the name alone is intriguing. And we cannot wait to hear more about it. What's even more interesting is she is playing many different roles today. She came from doing what, Betty?
Mowing her yard, her sister's yard, I believe she said.
Yes.
Front and back, so I am impressed.
I tell you what, go from mowing lawns to radio shows.
That's right.
I mean, that is just a typical woman's day, isn't it?
An Alaskan woman's day.
Alaskan woman's day.
Did you see any moose?
Not
or
this
bear?
morning. Not this morning.
I had a conversation with a lady this morning, and she had already seen 3 bear in her backyard. Where else does that happen?
Only
except in Alaska.
I know. We get the privilege of experiencing those things here, don't we?
And it never grows old.
I know. It really doesn't. It's just like seeing the mountains every time you go that direction. It's just so awesome. Such a blessing to be here. To get things started, I want to turn things right over to you, Tina, just to tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in this ministry, God Behind Bars.
Great. Thank you very much for inviting me. This is a wonderful opportunity. As you mentioned, my name is Tina Johnson-Stair, and I've been in Alaska since October of '95, so definitely home. God Behind Bars was an opportunity that came to me at about the time life seasons were changing for me. And not something I would have sought out, definitely just something, almost a passing fancy. And I just tried it out and learned more about it, and I've been going ever since November of 2012. And it's just been a wonderful experience.
So exactly what is God Behind Bars?
God Behind Bars exists to introduce inmates and their families to Christ, not only to introduce them, but also to strengthen their relationships, not only with each other, but with Jesus.
And so you take the Bible, you take other volunteers inside the prisons and do what?
We are a team of volunteers that meet weekly, and we experience a dynamic worship. God Behind Bars has provided state-of-the-art audio and visual equipment, and it's kind of like going to a concert. It's really, really amazing. I can't tell you how cool it is, but we as volunteers go in, and there's a group within Highland, the women's prison, that set everything up, the audio-visual, the chairs, everything. And it's kind of like going to a movie theater in a way. And we meet with the inmates and pray with them. We learn with them. We watch the worship video, and then we, have an opportunity to get to know them and, like I said, pray with them.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I imagine there was some kind of training. Did you, or you just? I know you didn't just one day show up at the prison and say, "Hey, I want to come in and do a Bible study with these ladies."
You are right. There's DOC, which is Department of Corrections orientation, that is held throughout the year, various times, and it is just basic training for things you need to know for going into a prison. And there are also other opportunities throughout the year just to kind of be better versed in dealing with the prison population and things like that.
Is there an age requirement, Tina, to get involved in this ministry?
Adults.
Okay.
Yeah, and other than the DOC application and orientation, which is required, we do have just a short application for God Behind Bars, just so we know who all is volunteering on God Behind Bars' behalf.
So it sounds like they gather as a group when you come in. Do you also get one-on-one opportunities with that?
There are one-on-one opportunities with a mentorship program, and that's something different than God Behind Bars. But when we do go in as a team of volunteers, we can meet with them one-on-one in the gymnasium. We're not alone with the inmates or anything like that, but we can meet with them and just pray with them one-on-one. If they have a specific prayer need or a prayer request, we can just right then and there break into a prayer and just lift them up.
So on their side of being an inmate, how do they know about this this event, if you will, going on?
Well, it's been going on since October of 2012, and it's just part of the routine. Every Friday night, they look forward to it.
Everybody goes, or is it just if they want to?
It's an optional.
Okay.
It's an optional program, and nobody is forced to go. There are most of the inmates do have the privilege of going, and many of them do. We have as many as, not just at Highland, but as many as 200 inmates that will attend God Behind Bars services, which is pretty neat.
That is amazing. Would you say that the prison staff themselves notice a difference in the inmates between the time that you guys have come in versus when they didn't have this program in place?
Absolutely. We've heard, personally, I've heard just comments about the demeanor and just the atmosphere. You know, when we walk in on Friday nights, we have to walk down the hall towards the auditorium, and just smiles, and you see the joy that people are glad to see us, not just the inmates, but the correctional officers as well.
I would imagine it definitely lends itself to changing the culture there significantly, to have such a positive, encouraging enforcement
Yes.
provide them.
I think anytime there is a religious program going on, it really strengthens the person. You know, they just grow and I think appreciate every opportunity that they have.
Now, we are talking about women.
Yes.
You present this to women. Is there God Behind Bars for men here in Alaska as well?
In Alaska, yes. I only go to Highland, which is the women's institution, but we also, well, there's men's prisons. God Behind Bars is at Goose Creek, which is out in the valley, and Ketchikan, and also Spring Creek down in Seward. And those are male institutions.
And there's only women on your team, volunteers, is that correct?
Not exactly. We have had a few men, married couples, or chaplains or pastoral staff.
Mm-hmm.
They have, but otherwise it's mostly women.
And how do these women, how do they respond to you? I mean, do they participate in the service? Do they sing the songs? Do they take part?
Yes, as I mentioned, just the smiles and the greetings before we even begin and get into the auditorium. The energy when we go in. I have a favorite spot in the auditorium, kind of in the back, and not for any reason that I don't have to be there, but I choose it because I can just see what's happening. As I mentioned, it's on a movie screen, and all the chairs are set up. And the ladies starts out with worship, and they're singing. Their arms are raised, and the energy is just phenomenal. It doesn't get old.
It never would.
No.
And are you allowed to give an invitation for these women to accept Christ? Are you? We
have, and our sermons are videotaped, and they come in, and a lot of times at the end of the service, they do have that opportunity. And as a matter of fact, about a year or so ago, there was one gal it was her first visit to God Behind Bars, and she hadn't been incarcerated very long. But she broke down, and she accepted Christ that night, and I prayed with her. And the months following, just watching her grow, I can't even put it into words. And she's doing very, very well. She's since been released, and to the best of my knowledge, she's doing great.
When they are released, are you allowed to stay in contact with them?
Yes, we are. A lot of times they are released into transitional housing, and sometimes they have restrictions to go to church. We've been able to give rides not only from the prison to wherever it is they're going. That's something that we have to set up ahead of time, but we've done that before. And if they need a ride to church, we can certainly pick them up and, just kind of walk alongside them.
I am assuming you're always looking for volunteers. And
Absolutely.
You're always needing help.
Absolutely.
Okay. Let's suppose some woman would like to help you. What would be the very first thing they would have to do if they felt this was their calling? How would they get involved? What would you tell them to do first?
Aside from contact me or one of the other God Behind Bars volunteers, godbehindbars.com has a lot of information, and I can provide information for the next orientation that there is. We do have, with DOC approval, can do a one-time visit. That, of course, is ahead of time. And if someone wants to get their feet wet and see if it's going to be a good fit, we can do that.
Oh, so they can just go try it out?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And how would they contact you?
My email is gbb, that's God Behind Bars, gbb907tina@gmail.com.
I know that you're on Facebook, but you also said you're not on there very often.
Right. I'm not. But email, I check my email regularly. And yeah, I'm more than happy to get anyone involved that's willing. We can have up to 8 volunteers per night. And it's just a really neat experience.
And what's the time? How is it, an hour service?
It's just a little over an hour. Typically on a Friday night, the volunteers will meet in the lobby of the correctional center and pray before we go in. And then we go in, and about 7 o'clock is when it actually starts. And it lasts just about an hour. And so that gives us time before and after to pray and meet with the ladies.
Do you have to do any kind of setup, or is that taken care of for you?
That's taken care of. There's a group within Highland called TLC, and there's a set group of ladies that take care of it all. We basically just show up and be blessed.
Isn't that something that you end up being the one that's blessed?
Mm-hmm.
Every time.
Every
single time.
I love that about God. When His people do His work and they're trying to bless somebody, you end up getting the blessing.
That's
every
absolutely
time.
true. Mm-hmm. Tina, you already kind of touched on this a little bit, but I'm going to ask you again to share with us, what was it that drove you towards this ministry? I know it just kind of came across your path, but what was it that said, you know what, this is the right place for me to serve?
As I mentioned, I stumbled upon it, and I guess the draw for me was there was a time many, many years, almost a lifetime ago, that I could have very well been in that situation. And by the grace of God, I never was. And I think by bringing Christ into the prison, it kind of gives me an opportunity to relate with these women and let them know that, they're just like me.
Yeah. They're just human.
Yes, they're just
well.
human, and we're all children of God.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I wanted to mention, Church Inside, if somebody were to go to GodBehindBars.com, there is a link, and for Church Inside, its families outside prison can experience the same worship service as their loved ones inside. And each week they hear the same messages, they learn the same biblical truths, and move forward in the spiritual journey together. So Friday night, if Sally's mother in the lower 48 were to go online, she could watch the same sermon, the same worship, and it gives them something more to talk about.
I know you sent me the link to a video to watch. It was very, very good to explain a little bit more about God Behind Bars, and I was surprised to find out that it's such a new ministry. It's only been around since 2009 and been here since 2012. So in Alaska, it's only been here 4 years.
Right, and it started October 2012 at Highland, and it's just continued to grow. My first visit was the Friday after Thanksgiving, 2012. And as I mentioned, I've been pretty much hooked and going more often than not. And it's always looking to grow. We're always looking for more volunteers. And as our volunteer base grows, there are more opportunities that we can reach out and extend when the ladies are released.
Was it difficult to be allowed inside Highland?
No, not with the DOC approval, going through the orientation and things like that.
I mean, for God Behind Bars, was it difficult? Did you set that up, or
no.
was that set up nationally?
This was from the God Behind Bars crew in Nevada, and that's kind of where it started. And they've just kind of paved the way, not only in Alaska, but in Nevada, Colorado, Florida, Oklahoma, Tennessee, and Texas. All of those states have prisons with God Behind Bars services.
I know we had Jennifer Waller on the show several weeks ago, and she was part of God Behind Bars. She was part of that ministry, and she made the comment that you did. She said she'd always wondered why she was never arrested and put in jail, because there were so many times she should have been. And so when she got saved, when she gave her life to Christ, she wanted to go back and give back to the women that had been arrested. And so she's been working with God Behind Bars also.
And she has made a tremendous impact, both inside and outside.
Well, I think it's just a very amazing ministry, because so many people would be fearful.
Yeah.
Yes.
Fearful for their safety to go into a prison to be with these women. But you know what? If God calls you to it, He's going to bring you through it.
That's right. And I've never felt threatened at all. Volunteers, there's we're kind of a mixed bunch. We have some volunteers that have led very Christ-filled lives. You know, that they've never kind of never would be in the situation that they would be behind bars, and yet they still have the same story to share. They are still able to relate with these women. We're all, like you said, we're all human.
I doubt that any of these women, when they were little girls, that was their lifelong goal.
No.
It was just a choice of many bad choices.
Things happen, circumstances happen, and I've heard testimonies from several of the women, and it's sad. And when they do find Christ and their relationship strengthens with him, they experience the hope that only Christ can provide. And you can literally see the joy in their eyes, and just see his light shine through them. Even incarcerated, they're still going about their business behind bars and just doing it with a glad heart.
Now, are the women allowed to get together and have a Bible study on their own if they choose?
There are Bible studies that occur during the week. I think Wednesdays, there's one that volunteers kind of run, and there are other, as I mentioned, mentoring opportunities on Monday. I know that's a great need for Monday evening mentors, and Chaplain Blodgett at Highland is able to connect anybody that's interested in that. But there are other opportunities too. I have a friend that is part of the Run Club. It's not a prison ministry per se, yet she reaches out to these gals, and in a healthy way. And a lot of times she will see these same gals in the Run Club on a Friday night.
A Run Club. Sounds like they run.
Yes, and they have relays and they have races, and there's really a lot that goes on within the prison that you really would have no idea.
It would all be foreign to me. I don't even know where it's at. I mean, I have heard of it. And just recently I'm meeting more and more women that are feeling called to the prison ministry to mentor these women, to get to know them, to do their part in helping these women when they're released to have a job and to be a member of society once again, and to not go back.
To stay connected and just to keep on the path that Christ has put them on, and just keep that focus. That's very important.
How did your husband feel about you getting involved in this ministry?
He was not 100% keen on it at first, but he was quickly sold. He saw the joy that it brought me, and he recognizes that, once a week I'm making a difference in somebody's life, and I think he has learned to really appreciate that.
Yeah, that's neat. It's good to have his support, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. And my kids are used to me, being gone Friday nights.
Yeah. You shared one story of victory of a girl that was behind bars, and you guys were able to witness to her through this ministry. And then as far as you know, she's walking a better life now. Is there another story of victory that you'd like to share with us today?
Oh, goodness. Specifically, that's kind of hard to say. There have been a lot.
Yeah.
And, there is some recidivism. I've seen some gals that have ended back up in Highland. And when they have Christ in their heart, they know, they own it. They do what they need to do to make it right and try it again once they are released. But gals that are released and stay connected, are going to church, are getting plugged into Bible studies and things like that, getting jobs. And I think that's kind of hard to do sometimes too. For a lot of the gals with a record, finding a job isn't something, that's something that we might take for granted. It's a whole different ballgame.
Or even just finding a place to live.
Right.
That really limits your housing opportunities as well.
Absolutely.
Anything else you want to add today, Betty?
I don't think so. Is there anything? I do want to add one more thing. Volunteers. Are you always in need of more help?
Always. We always have room for more volunteers. And especially, in Alaska, summertime, some of us like to hit the road or travel. And there's just always room for volunteers.
So again, can you tell the ladies if their desires to be a part of this, how they would contact you?
gbb907tina@gmail.com.
Thank you, Tina. You've gave us a lot of good information, and you brought a new ministry to light for us. And that's what we like to do here on Living Well. We like to know what's going on in the community. And maybe someone listening will decide to volunteer.
Wonderful. Thank you again for inviting me.
We want to thank you. I want to thank you as well, Tina, so much for joining us today. It's neat to just expose another ministry I absolutely knew nothing about. I'm sure there was many others that had no ideas of its existence, and just another opportunity for Alaska women to get involved and serve in yet another ministry. So thank you so much.
My pleasure.
And we want to thank everybody for joining us today on Living Well. You can find us here every Wednesday at 1 p.m. on KATB 89.3 in Anchorage, as well as KJLP 88.9 in Palmer. You can also catch us online at katb.org, and we'll see you next Wednesday.